Good evening. Welcome inside the Hera press box for our post NWSL episode. And things will be a little interesting, I guess, today, just as the draft was. I'm basically going to be looking up these picks real time. I was able to pay attention for the first round and a half. I was in a conference here in Chicago, so I didn't get to pay attention as much as I wanted to. And actually, I stopped sort of paying attention after things went haywire as far as the trades went. So I asked Alyssa to maybe lead me through a couple things that happened. But yeah, so do you know if you can tell me the parts of that trade between the three teams? That would get me to a place where I'm not currently at.
So it was a crazy trade, and I'm trying to find the tweet that explains it the best, because it kind of essentially what it comes down to is Carly Lloyd's going to Sky Blue. The Houston Dash are getting Kristen Press in an international roster spot, and then Chicago is getting Sam Kerr and Nikki Stanton. And that's kind of the breakdown of it, of who's getting who type of deal.
So the Red Stars lose Press.
Yes.
The Dash lose Lloyd.
Yes. And Janine Becky, sorry.
And Becky was involved in that trade as well.
And Becky was involved in that trade. She's also going to Sky Blue.
So my initial reaction was, and I saw your text that Becky was gone, and those two moves from the Dash are actually two moves that we had talked. I don't know if you were in agreement, but we had talked about on it before. I've always been impressed by Becky on the international stage, but as far as the NWSL performance goes, I've never thought she's been up to where she should be.
Yeah, and that's when everyone had said, in the sense of, she's lived up to the hype for her country, but she didn't live up to the hype for her club, is pretty much what it came down to. And so, yes, there's the potential of her being this amazing player for club. It's just the way that Houston has wanted it to.
And so on the Red Stars end, which I guess I'm more worried about, or should be more worried about, especially because I don't know if so they basically just swapped Press for Kerr.
Right.
And obviously Kerr easily in the debate for best player in the world.
Yeah.
So,
but not according to FIFA.
Right, true. Yeah, but still a surprising move for that. I mean, just from a chemistry standpoint.
Yeah.
What message is that franchise trying to send? I guess maybe comes into play with, okay, we're changing things up, either win or you're all gone. I don't know what.
Yeah, and I guess I don't know too much about the Kerr Stanton side of things, in terms of there was at least promise there with them, with Kerr. I've been hearing some rumblings, and I think I might have brought this up a couple episodes ago about how Kerr might be going overseas to play. That might have played into this whole thing as well. I guess I know a little bit more about the Red Stars and the Dash just because that's what people are mostly tweeting about, and they're really not giving any more information on the Sky Blue side of things.
And the Dash just received an international slot. Is that what you said?
Mm-hmm.
That's the only pick that they received. So they get Press in an international slot.
Yeah.
Reportedly so far.
Yep. I do believe that one more player, maybe from Sky Blue, has to be named in the trade, but that's pretty much what it is.
Okay.
But it was.
Yeah.
Apparently it was. I don't know your thoughts. I don't know if you knew about this or anything, but it was a mutual decision between Press and Dames to kind of part ways. She had pretty much asked for a trade and apparently had given them a list of, here's who I'm going to go, or who I want to play for. And I guess I have a hard time believing that the Dash was on that list. But for her sake, I really hope it was.
Yeah, so the Dash get rid of two midfielders today and add a forward outside of the draft.
Yeah.
So
And
how many?
added like 3 more forwards in the draft.
What was your initial thought when you saw McCaskill to the Breakers at number 2?
That's what I assumed. The top 3, the position of
Right.
those top 3 went
Okay.
away.
Oh, hey, I'm not saying let's go on our. I called the draft. Yeah, it's whatever. No big deal.
Yeah.
And what was your first thought when you saw now? I mean, you knew that the Dash no longer had that number 3 pick. You didn't think
There
they
was
literally just had the best defender fall into their lap and
right.
that they're
Well,
not
that's
there.
yeah, and I talked about it a couple days ago, and when the Dash traded away that pick, and I said the only thing that I can think of for them to trade that pick away was because they had some sort of knowledge or thinking possibility that Boston would be taking Quinn, and then they'd be sitting there, and the logical person to take next would be McCaskill. So when Boston took him, my first thought was, we definitely shouldn't have traded away that pick. Sorry, the Dash shouldn't have. I don't know if I should start calling us we anymore because we'll see after today how it all works out. But I thought I understood why they did it, but I don't think it was the greatest move, at least not right now, to trade away that pick.
Oh, it makes zero sense to me, especially after
Yeah.
unloading Lloyd in a draft in a move that we had talked about as far as sort of a youth movement, and now you have the third pick in the draft to pick the best defender who's listed as a midfielder on Wikipedia.
Yeah. Yeah, I figured when they traded away, when they made that trade, and I don't know if I told you this at all, but I had a feeling that Lloyd was going to be gone. I thought we had kind of talked about this after they made that trade and brought on Jordan and Agnew, that they were going to be moving Lloyd. It didn't make sense for them to be holding her. And for her, it didn't make sense to stay. She really didn't want to be in Houston, so you might as well just, if you can get someone like a Kristen Press who actually wants to play for you, let's hope that's the case, then why not?
5 goalies selected. 2 names that should not have been picked ahead of either one of the Clems. Sarah Schimmer from the University of Washington and Annabelle Geist, Oregon State to Portland. So that's a local pick.
Yeah.
Sarah Schimmer to the Dash. Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
If they had if I could see that being a dumb move if they already had a young goalkeeper that was going to be in goal for a while, maybe one that had international experience. But since they do not, makes sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Any surprises for you in the draft?
I do believe there were a handful. Let me make sure I've got the list here in front of me. I know there were a handful of players that fell a lot farther than I thought that they were going to. And part of that was looking at that room, it looked like there were a lot of players there. Mm-hmm. And I don't know how many were there. I didn't see anybody saying anything about that. But I think 3 went up to the podium.
Mm-hmm.
So that means 3, maybe maximum 5 players. And I don't think that was the case. Were made speeches and were there. So you're going to tell me that the majority of those other players in that room didn't get drafted? Which to me is a little bit weird. Awkward, I guess, more or less is the word for that. Another surprise for me was that Corbaz didn't get drafted, which at least draft her. You're in the 3rd round and no one's drafted her. Then you get into the 4th round and no one's drafted her. Why not just draft her and then have the rights to her?
Yeah, when we have the Sky Blue taking Casey Murphy a goalie in
Yeah,
the second round.
yes, because that to me, that pick was, I understood it because at least you're getting the rights to her. So it was even more shocking to me that Korbas didn't get drafted because you're not sure. We already know that Murphy's going overseas. I mean, we know that. And we didn't know that with Korbas. I'm trying to see. There was another player that got picked. Indigo Gibson fell, which was one that I do believe I may have had her going in the first round. Yes, I did actually. I had her going in the first round to the exact same team that she got drafted by, the Red Stars.
So I just looking on here, 40 total picks. 19 of those were involved in some type of trade, at least one trade throughout the offseason and today. 21 picks stayed with their original owner.
Yeah, it was kind of a crazy draft. This was my first experience with actually watching it from start to finish, and this whole timeout situation about how you can take a timeout.
I was going to ask you about timeouts.
Take a timeout and get another 5 minutes to determine what you're going to do.
Did the league only take one timeout, or did they take more?
The league took one timeout. I do believe was the only one. I think it was in the first round.
So, did you listen to?
Yeah. I should say yes, but I didn't listen very closely.
How many players got interviewed?
All of the ones that were there.
You said there were only 3?
There were more than that, but it felt like there were more players sitting in that room that didn't speak.
So 3 got interviewed?
I don't know how many got interviewed, but like probably a handful. Whoever was up on the podium got interviewed afterwards. And then there were other interviews throughout the broadcast.
Were there any tough questions?
I don't think so. One of the questions, I forgot who the player was, but she was going to Utah. She's like, "What do you know about Utah?" Well, not that much, because I went to college at Duke. Like, what kind of question was that?
Who was on the broadcast?
That's a good question. Allie Wagner. And then you're gonna kill me for not knowing. But
it wasn't Dalen?
No. I don't remember who Jordan Angeli, if I'm pronouncing that right, was the one who was interviewing the players, and then there were 2 other people kind of on the round table with Allie Wagner discussing picks.
Did they have the keeper notes lady?
Sure.
What is her name? What is her name? Any other big takeaways from watching?
The Spirit had a great draft. I think better than I anticipated them to have, given that you are getting the best player to play the game, at least at a collegiate level, and has the potential to be one of the best ever.
Jen Cooper is keeper notes lady.
Jen Cooper?
Yeah, Andy Sullivan, Rebecca Quinn, Skylar Dupree, Mallory Eubanks, Brittany Bossinger, Maddie Huster, Rachel Moore. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, 4 first-round talents taken by the Spirit today.
Mm-hmm. Trying to find who was all on the round table.
You watch it on YouTube or NWSL site?
I went to. The other thing I noticed, at least in the beginning of the draft, actually, for sure in the beginning of the draft, I was seeing the picks come through social media before I was seeing them being picked on video. So bigger delay than I was hoping for or expected.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then they had, was it in the second round? They had a Lifetime person announcing the picks. And Chris Henderson had a pretty good tweet about that, saying, so pretty much you can come announce the picks, but you can't put it on your station on cable. Appreciate it.
Any words from Amanda Duffy, acting commissioner?
There were, I didn't really pay attention, or at least it was more or less after that she had made some remarks. I had kind of seen some stuff via social media about it, but I didn't pay too close attention to those afterwards. And apparently they were chanting draft a commissioner after the last pick. So that's always great. I like that one.
What did fan support look like? Were there any teams that looked to be more well represented?
The Spirit was well represented. They started chanting right away after they announced that they were on the clock for the first pick. And then a Sky Blues crowd was there as well, and they were pretty loud throughout. I do believe those were the only two bigger supporter casts there. This draft was, I was so essentially overwhelmed with what was going on. But it was a good overwhelming.
With trades and moves and stuff?
Yeah. And then just kind of seeing how everything came through, and just, I mean, like I said, with Indigo Gibson falling and Brittany Bassinger, I had her in the first round, which honestly, take that with a grain of salt because it's me who's picking it, but she fell to the beginning of the third round. And I think Morgan Reed taken at 38 by the Courage was the steal of the draft.
What sort of league advertisement promotions, if anything, did they do in the draft?
As far as in between picks, or what?
Anything other than the draft?
No, not really. I know that there were like videos and things like that to start off with, and then I think they had a video or two throughout the whole draft playing on the big screen, but there wasn't really anything. It was that round table who was talking in between picks. So I have a question for you in terms of the Dashes pick in the first round, Haley Hansen out of Nebraska. Your thoughts on that pick, or in general, what does she bring to the table? Do you know what she brings to the table? Just because it's Big Ten, I figured you might have some thoughts.
So she is. There's a player out of Nebraska that a couple years ago who's now in the league. I want to say she played on FCKC. I can't remember what her name is now. Very similar. It's almost a prototypical Nebraska Cornhusker.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we're going to have here with Haley Hansen, the midfielder. And I'll try to look real quick to see what that other girl's name is. I'm going to go on Nebraska's. I think she was a rookie this year, so on FCKC. Mm-hmm. Caroline Flynn, is that I'm thinking of? I don't know. I'll give up anyway. I don't know where she fits in on this Dash team. Mm-hmm. I mean, now there's obviously room in the midfield to play. A lot of possession. She's not gonna push the ball or dominate a game like Rose Lavelle's going to.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
But it's solid, I guess. I don't know. I'd say don't complain about it, but don't get your hopes too high.
In terms of complaining about it, I might have to complain about it just because we could have had the number 3 pick. Or I'm sorry, the Dash could have had the number 3 pick and picked an amazing defender, which they didn't pick any. At least I don't remember them picking. I guess I don't know what you want to call it, solid defender, someone who's played true defense essentially. I don't know if that makes sense, but everyone I think that they picked were listed as forward, midfield, and defender.
I'd imagine Abby Alinsky is probably going to get slotted as a defender on that roster.
Yeah, Chelsea Bush from The Equalizer interviewed Amber Brooks and Vera afterwards, and Brooks had said that Vera has a certain way of playing, and we were going to draft to that certain way of playing, and that's exactly what we did. And I know she had tweeted something about someone must have been complaining about how you can register for the draft and you can register listing forward, midfielder, and defender. And she goes, that's exactly what I did. And she goes, the picks that we picked, they're not going to be forwards. They're going to be on the back line or in the midfield. But apparently they drafted her the way that Vera wants to play. So I guess we'll find out if that is something they should have been doing or not. And the analysts that were on that round table were Marissa Pillar, Allie Wagner, and then Jen Cooper.
Oh.
I thought they did a great job. I thought Allie Wagner had some really good points. When the Dash drafted their keeper, she said that she's good off the line and she's going to work on her reaction time and everything because they're going to be raining goals on shots on goal. It's like, yep, because the Dash didn't pick anybody on the back line. That's why they're going to be shooting the crap out of the ball.
And you just play 2 goalies and have one not use their hands? Because the Dash would be better off doing that.
Yep. We'll see.
So I guess Rachel's playing defense.
Yep.
So that's confirmed.
Yep, that's pretty much, I would say so.
Or Michelle's going to play 0 minutes, even though she's a top 10 forward in the league.
Right. Yep. Yeah. And the turnaround is going to be so quick this season too. So I was just thinking about how many people that they have up top, and you have such a little or shorter time frame this year because the season was pushed up a week or 2, I think. So it's going to be interesting to see what this final roster looks like for the Dash. But I have a feeling it's going to look completely different than the way it does now.
How the Utah scarf look? Did you see all the team scarves?
I did not see all the team scarves, and that was one that I didn't even come across. Oh, let me see if I can find one though.
So I guess moving forward now, as you look that up from our perspective, what we can do for this, I'd imagine we probably won't see too many moves from here until the beginning of the season. So we probably will back off a little bit on the NWSL. We'll pick up Olympic talk, Aussie Open. We'll be finishing up by the time we're on our next episode. So that's something else to talk about. NWHL in your W League will still be going on, so we'll talk about that. But NWSL, I guess it's just if you have anything to bring up, we can talk about that or go over rosters now that the draft has been completed, what team each team has, and work on getting our predictions for the season ready for that.
Yeah, their scarf is okay. I mean, it's standard, I guess, if you want to call it that. But I think the league is getting new jerseys this year. If I'm I thought I read somewhere, if I'm not
Really?
mistaken. So
Okay.
hopefully it will be an upgrade. We might have to do some regrading.
Yeah, I'm gonna be fine with that.
All right.
Okay. Anything else you want to talk about from the draft?
Not anything from the draft.
Okay, you got other stuff, huh?
I was just going to quick run through an update on the W League.
Okay.
So we've got Brisbane Roar still on top of the ladder, Sydney FC, then Newcastle, and then Melbourne City. This weekend, we've got Western Sydney versus Melbourne Victory, Perth Glory versus Canberra United, Melbourne City versus Brisbane Roar. Perth Glory versus Canberra United is going to be really pushing towards possibly getting that last spot in the top 4. Melbourne City, again, is playing this week as well. But it goes Melbourne City at 4, Canberra United at 5, and Perth Glory at 6. Melbourne City really needs to win out because I do believe they do not play in round 13, and there are 14 rounds. So for them to lose out on any sort of points is not going to be good for these next 3 rounds or these last 3 rounds. And that's all that I had for the W League.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, one thing going back to the draft. So this trade with the Dash in Chicago and Sky Blue, it was the players to be named later. And apparently the whole holdup in not telling us who those players were right away is because they had to notify the players. So if you're Sam Kerr and Nikki Stanton, you're on Australian time. And I would really just like to know what their thought process was having to wake up to a phone call at whatever time and just being like, yep, you're getting traded. Just as an FYI. Which for them, it's got to be terrible because they're fan favorites. I mean, Sam Kerr is a fan favorite, I think, for everybody. But I think especially with Sky Blue because they're not a big market team. There's not like the Portland Thorns where everyone knows who they are type of thing. So it was this big name on this small market team. So I just like to see that. I would like to know their thought process of that. And I do believe Becky's the only one that I've seen say something so far, at least on social media.
Really?
Yeah, I don't think Stanton has anything. I don't think she said anything. I don't think Kerr. I haven't seen anything from Kerr.
Who was that picture that you sent me of sitting on the beach or wherever with Sophia?
Oh, Julie Ertz.
Oh, yeah, Ertz. Okay. Mm-hmm. Say if that was Press and Sophia, then like Press's breakup
that's just
picture.
Sad. Well, yeah. And I don't know if we ever talked about it on here, but there were rumblings that Press was on the way out after last season. Once they lost, I had seen some things that it seemed like she was on her way out. But we didn't hear anything, and now all of a sudden it's draft day, and oh, hey, by the way, you actually are leaving. We just decided to wait till the last minute. But, it happens. It's a business, so.
That's right. You're learning.
Yeah. Good. Yeah, I know it. I just don't like it. There's a difference.
Well, I'm glad you survived your first draft.
Yeah, barely, but I did.
You barely survived and were able to help me understand a few different things that happened tonight. So with that, I think we talked enough about the draft for now. Anyway, it'll linger throughout the season, I'm sure, as players develop and we see what kind of minutes each player of these gets. So we'll talk about that throughout the season. For tonight and for the NWSL draft for now, I think we are finished. So Sunday evening podcast should be a go.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, should be on then, about the same time, 10 o'clock. And we'll see what we have to talk about then. Not really sure yet, but we'll figure something out. So for tonight, thank you for stopping by the Hera Press Box.